Welcome everyone to another Empathy Week webinar series, and tonight or this afternoon or this morning, wherever you're listening from, I am delighted to have a good friend with me, and also someone that has played a little part in Empathy Week this year in giving her leadership expertise, along with Sarah Milne-Rowe, who we had on the show earlier today as well, actually. So Mamta Gera, welcome to the show, and I'm going to be quizzing you on all things.
Absolutely. My brother from another mother, as I call you.
Yes, we it's weird. I was thinking we've actually only known each other a year, pretty much to the day.
Literally, yeah, it was. Oh my God, courageous leaders. When was that? It was today, a year ago. No,
yeah, I think, or end of February. End of February.
Yeah, it was.
It was. But I haven't properly introduced you. I need to tell everyone the amazing work you've done. So you've been involved with Amazon, BBC, Sky, building yourself a career through them, and you've then gone on to go and do your own work and consulting and leadership and emotional leadership as well, I think is maybe a way of saying it, but we're going to go into that. And we're going to be talking particularly about the power within you, which is a course and something that you've developed actually through because of lockdown. And I was lucky enough to be part of the first course that went out, or one of the first courses that went out, and talking about a lot of things that I think we skirt off of. We feel them and then we go, or throw them to the side, whether that's imposter syndrome or feeling we're not good enough, or not knowing how to progress, not knowing how to get the best out of ourselves. So I'm really excited to delve into that. But I want to start at the start. Your life, school and early career, how was that for you growing up? And what did you want to do?
45 minutes, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll try and be quick with this one. So I grew up, I was born and brought up in London, northwest London, and I grew up in the 80s, so hopefully that's not giving my age away too much. But I was in predominantly at that point, a very much white area. So I was only a few of the Asian kids at school. And to be honest, I was a really shy kid. I was someone with quite a low self-image, didn't really know how to speak up, wore these like really geeky gold glasses, which are really trendy now. So I dig up some of those glasses from back in the day.
I've got some blue light ones here.
Look at that, see, love those. And so I was, I wasn't very confident with myself, but I think that shone through. So unfortunately, getting through school was meaning that I had to sort of deal with racism on a daily basis, and also deal with some bullying as well, which I really had to deal with during high school, basically up to like middle school, and that was fine. But it really, thinking that you're not good enough or you look different from other people, really didn't help my confidence in any way. And although I enjoyed school, I had a good group of people or friends that I was with, having still been called, a packy, or go back home, and having food thrown at you and things like that as you were going through school was incredibly difficult. So I took that through with me, that image with me throughout like most of my adulthood, actually. And I wasn't able to really, I just thought, why if because I'm brown, I'm different? Like I didn't understand it. And then you kind of realize as you get older what racism means, and why you're different and how people perceive you and that sort of stuff. And I think that was something which you had to deal with, especially my parents' generation who came before that. So it was super tough, but I did actually enjoy school, although I didn't study much, but I did well. So I kind of winged it a little bit, but I did enjoy the times I was there, because I'm always a half glass full type of person. So it was tough at times.
Yeah, not easy, and there'll be lots of people that resonate with you. I think even people will have experienced bullying, or a lot of people will have experienced bullying in some sort of way. But I think when you talk about racism, something that I've never had to experience, something that you can't change, which is the color of your skin.
Absolutely.
It's it seems so ridiculous when we're talking about it, but it does have those long-lasting effects into people's careers.
It does, because you then wonder whether people are judging you on the way you appear rather than in your ability to perform. But unfortunately, in what we're seeing, you know, with diversity, equity, inclusion, that still happens. People still have that unconscious bias, which is why people are now having to go through, you know, companies are having to implement training about, you know, how to overcome that bias that we have innately in us that we grew up from childhood with, right? If your parents at home are saying, don't trust that person because they look like that way, don't trust that person, then obviously you're going to grow up that perception as you get older.
Yeah, and there's an unlearning process there, I think.
Yeah, which takes a long time as an adult as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you were at school and it was mixed bag, and did you then go into uni and what was your first working your job? What was your first like kind of job outside of education?
So I went to sixth form college after school, did some A levels. There were more Indian people there, which was nice. I could hang out with the crew, which was awesome. Did my A levels and then went into Kingston University, where I did computer science, information systems design. So essentially computer science. Tech back then was very new. Email didn't sort of existed, so that was like 1993. But it had a year's placement, so I was actually able to study and do a placement in a software company when I was like 19, 20 years old, which was amazing. And I always grew from working because my dad, when I was 16, my dad's like, right, mate, you need to earn some money. So he used to work in a bank in Liverpool Street. He got me a job at NatWest in Liverpool Street. So I had to get the tube when I was 16 every summer and every winter until I was like 21 to earn this money. That was when I realized I didn't want to do banking because I didn't like it. But I did realize I would do something else. So I basically did that degree, got some work experience. And then amazingly, when I finished my degree, I got 2-1 in it in the end. I saw a job. I was on the tube and I was looking at this job in the Evening Standard. And I was like, they were looking for a software developer at Clifford Chance, which is one of the biggest law firms in the world. And it was like, okay, cool, I'm going to go for it. And that's how you used to apply for jobs back then. So you had to write a letter and then post it
No
off.
internet.
Yeah, it's very primitive back then. And then send off the letter. To my amazement, I got an interview for that job. They're based out in Aldgate. I was very lucky to have a brother who is 7 years older than me and who went through that process himself. So he's almost my mentor. So he would practice the interviews with me. So he's like, they're going to ask you this question, so you answer it this way. And he knew exactly what the interview process would be. So he mentored me and I went for the interview and I went for 2 interviews and I got the job. And what they told me when I got the job was that you beat 400 people to the job. And I was like, what? Like, I couldn't believe it, like, honestly. And I was like, this, you know, person with me who doesn't feel good about themselves, that mentoring from my brother allowed me to push through my confidence and actually show. And what I showed was more emotional intelligence, more personal skills rather than my computer skills. And that's what got me the job in the end.
Amazing. It resonates with what other people have said so far on the show, which is one opportunity. Take, you know, the chances are there and the opportunities are there, but you have to go for them.
Yes.
And the second one is that element of support. And it sounds like great. You had your brother. And what advice would you give to someone who's doesn't have an older brother, who is a teenager or is a student at uni and doesn't have any connections, and their parents, you know, we don't really want our parents as mentors, do we?
No, you want to get the job, not get the job.
Yeah, exactly. And my dad is a careers advisor. He still is.
He was. I must be telling
so
you.
He still is. So, you know, I had my dad, your CV and build your CV and do it, or I wouldn't listen to him at all. Even though I've got the best advice. So we don't want to listen to our parents, and we don't have an older brother, we don't have a sibling. How can we get that support as a young person? What can we do instead?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you are in your education, but I would say that, well, the first thing is careers advice. I was about to say that, actually. I know your dad is, but, you know, I think it's improving. I don't think it was the best when I was younger, because I said I wanted to be a psychologist, and they're like, you're not clever enough to do that. So I hope that's definitely, seeking careers advice in your school, college, or university, but also speaking to your teachers, your professors, whoever is there for you, because ultimately these people want the best for you. And I think we see them as someone who we learn from in sort of in the practical ways, but actually we can also, talk to them about our careers as well. And I think we don't really reach out, or I don't think I'm not sure nowadays if it's open like that as well. But I would suggest that you utilize all your resources, or you find resources online of how to. There's lots of charities, there's lots of social enterprises that you can actually talk to get that advice as well. And I think that lots of people now are supporting young people in that area to kind of get that support.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen a few enterprises and charities and things that I think now that online you can just almost Google anything and get that support. You talked about emotional intelligence. I would say you are very emotionally intelligent, with the pleasure of knowing you and your courses. Did you develop that emotional intelligence? And obviously it's something you're still developing and everyone develops over time, but did you develop that through school or was it through work? And I'm also interested to know how you see emotional intelligence in big companies like Amazon, BBC, and Sky, where you're working amongst their technology teams. So sorry, it's a bit of a big question, but yeah, where has your emotional intelligence developed from?
Definitely not school. Probably not at home either, although I love my parents very much. We didn't really talk about how we felt. School, I wouldn't have had a clue about how to develop my skills to be more aware and empathic and that sort of stuff. So I think honestly, like I was probably partly was nature where had been naturally caring and aware. But I had that loving childhood as well, even though we didn't talk about our feelings, that love was still there. So that came with me through childhood. But I only became interested in emotional intelligence when I was reading more literature on the topic, because I didn't understand, going to these companies, why leaders were a certain way, why there was politics, there was ego, there was people trying to gain power and parts of the business. I wasn't really understanding why that was, and I was like, leadership to me, I don't want to be a leader if that means being a leader, because I'm not like that as a person. So I thought I couldn't be a leader because I was seeing who was in leadership at the time, and that goes for Amazon and Sky. Actually, the BBC were a lot more diverse, a lot more open. So my manager was a woman who was incredible. So I developed my emotional intelligence when I was questioning why I thought I couldn't be a leader, because I wasn't like that. And that's when that came into, listening to authors like Daniel Goleman, understanding what actual good leadership meant. And also my partner, she did a course in child psychotherapy, and she had to learn a lot about this. And so we came together many, many years ago in 2013. Together we created an app called FaceAche for young children, where they were able to understand each other's, like smiling, happy, angry, sad. And we did that a long time ago, like it was ages ago, but it was really important to us that young children understood what it meant to be aware of their emotions and that sort of stuff.
Amazing. An app in 2013, developing
Right?
apps. You were before the times. Everyone wants to make apps now, 2021.
I know, and that's the thing, right? I got a team in. I know I found a team in India. I got that done. I wrote the requirements. It was because I was in tech already, so I knew that was possible to do. I knew how to get to that stage.
That's amazing. And you've alluded there to the kind of what I wanted to stem into as well, which is leadership, and one of your kind of specialities and expertise, because leadership, you could have thousands of definitions there are thousands of definitions of leadership, and everyone seems to be creating different models of leadership, whether it's authentic,
Absolutely.
whether it's didactic, all these different types.
Mm.
What for you is leadership, and can you put it into any sort of category or title? What would you say?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you talked about authentic leadership. That is a model that exists. It hasn't been really well defined, but the way that I've learnt about leadership is that you need to lead yourself first before you lead others. And that means having personal leadership. And personal leadership is very much based on, you know, people like Stephen Covey, who wrote about, you know, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, great book to read. And he talked about, you know, understanding your habits and attitudes. So really thinking about, are your habits good? Are they making you progress forwards, or are they causing grief for you and others? It was looking at goals. So understanding, can you reach goals? Do you know what goals are? And how do you progress in your life? And then there was time management, which was super important. So if you can't manage your time, then how are you going to manage other people's time? And how are you going to be a role model, right? And also going on the role model part was, you know, what does a role model look like? I want to be someone that people look up to and that they can mimic and be healthy with. And the other one was around self-image. So understanding, like, you know, how do I feel about myself? If I don't feel good about myself, then people aren't going to perceive me in a good way either. So I think personal leadership is something which I have been coaching on and from. There are parts of personal leadership which are amazing, things like understanding your values. So when you understand and align your values, so you could be, as a value, you could be empathic, you could be, you know, family oriented, whatever it is, then you can align those values with your life, and you can also understand what you want to do in your life. So that very much is personal leadership. And so for me, if you don't understand yourself as a leader, you're not going to be able to lead other people that well either. And that self-awareness of being aware of yourself is really important, because then you can nurture, you know, an inclusive nature. And I think leadership is changing from when I was a leader, from when I was managed, it's changing. And I think it's imperative that it does. And I think as human beings, we thrive in its inclusive, diverse, collaborative cultures. And creating this is the responsibility of leaders and future leaders. Because what we want to do as a leader is make change, make positive change, sustainable change, empower people, support people, and pave the way for future leaders. And I think that was missing before. So regardless what you call it, I think, you know, if you can lead yourself in a really great way, in an emotionally intelligent way, then you can lead others too.
Yeah, it's great. I think the one thing I'm going to ask is also self-leadership, self-awareness. I think those things, and also it's great to hear from schools and my knowledge of schools now that it's so different from when you and I went to school.
Absolutely.
Because there is this, you know, if you ask a child, especially in a UK school now, what's a growth mindset, they can tell you, and what's a fixed mindset. Carol Dweck's work, and they understand that they've heard of the word resilience. I discovered the word resilience, I think, after university, and it hadn't been used, or I hadn't heard it. So it's amazing those things are moving forward. If young people are listening to this and they're hearing, okay, great self-leadership, great self-awareness, what does that tangibly look like? Is it getting a piece of paper and writing down what you do? I mean, I'm sure other people do it in different ways, but what are some tangible actions that people can actually have to, you know, sounds a bit cheesy, but discover themselves, right?
Yeah.
And not in the Instagram fly to Dubai sort of way, more in the actual, you know, yeah, a bit deeper and a bit, you know, actually have something useful that they can have about themselves. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Like when you mention self-awareness, even in sort of leadership programs, people are like, what is self-awareness? You know, like, I don't understand what that means. But self-awareness is the key component to everything that you probably do in your life. And that's just understanding and managing your emotions and your thoughts, basically. So, and we don't, how crazy is this that we need to talk about our thoughts? Like we just don't talk about what's going on here, you know. And if I could explain to everyone that we have this inner voice, and the inner voice is like created when we're like 12 to 18. We'll become aware of it. It's always there when we're like 12 months old. So it's very young. So we're always chatting to ourselves in our head, right? Which is a good thing, but it's a bad thing when we start thinking about the negative thoughts. And we don't ever speak to each other about, oh, you know what, I just thought about this. You know, because we think we look like a Muppet, or we make ourselves vulnerable, or whatever.
Or a weirdo.
Or a weirdo. And that's just insane to me. So that's a premise of being self-aware. So it's managing your thoughts and emotions. And the way that you can manage your thoughts is by, and if you're thinking negatively, it's called the inner critic, basically. So it's when you're criticizing yourself. It's like the devil on your shoulder, like talking to you, saying you're not good enough, you're not, you know, not pretty enough, you're not, you know, not good enough in any way. It's basically then taking that out of your mind and putting it down on paper, for example, like you said, and understanding your triggers and why you're feeling a certain way. Now, I ask my clients to do this all the time. So to make them self-aware, I ask them to write it down on paper, look at what it was, and then I try to identify their triggers, and I talk to them about it as well. And once you know what your triggers are, then you can start managing your fears around it. So for example, if you're thinking that I can't speak up, I'm too afraid to speak up, I'm not good enough, I don't know what I'm talking about, you write that down and said, actually, today I was really afraid to speak up in class or at work. And then you think about why you were afraid to speak up. Was it because of colleagues around you or your friends around you? Was it because you weren't feeling good that day? Was it because your mum said something to you which made you feel bad? So think about that and then try and manage it that way. And then your emotions are when you're feeling sad, or there's a kind of emotional scale basically. So if you can imagine at the top is happy, joyful, and at the bottom is resentment, negativity. You want to be able to like manage your emotions. So if you're feeling a certain way, so for example, you're feeling sad, think about why you're feeling sad, but then do something to enable you to feel better. So that going by exercising, by listening to music, by doing art. So it's about taking yourself out of that emotional awareness and bringing yourself up.
And do something that's healthy habits, because I think that's where also that's the line, isn't it? You can do something to make yourself feel better, but sometimes people fall into eating too much, or
Absolutely.
playing video games all the time, or just watching films. It's about having that balanced lifestyle as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's difficult for young people because they might have, might be seeing their parents do the same sort of thing, to not be aware of stuff. And that's no one's fault. It's just no one's been taught how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the difficult thing when you could be taught it at school, but when you're at home, it's more for parents to actually role model that as well to their kids, because we get into our own patterns and behaviors, regardless if you have kids or not. And I think that's the tricky bit. I think it's educating both parents and children together to understand, how to kind of change those dynamics.
Yeah, I always go for like the three-pronged approach, which is school, parents and teachers as well. I think you have that ecosystem around young people. Obviously, all of this has been made harder by COVID lockdown. For you, what were you doing just before COVID? Because actually, we kind of met just on the cusp of when we all went into lockdown. So I remember hearing you speak at Courageous Leaders event, which is shout out to Neilema Back to Jones, who is my absolute hero advisor on the board for Empathy Week as well. She's absolutely amazing. But she organised this event and you spoke at it along with some other amazing people. And you spoke about actually, what you then turned into a course. But for you, how did life change from due to COVID, and what's been the fruits out of that kind of transition period?
Yeah, I think, gosh, I was living a very busy life before COVID, and that was like, kind of getting on the tube a lot, meeting people, having coffees, doing one-to-one sessions and coaching. So I was keeping myself super busy, but I think I was getting too involved in the busyness. So I didn't really have time to stop and think about what I was doing. And actually, the turning point probably was that Courageous Leaders talk, because that was the first time I think I was being authentic about myself and sharing my story, because I was too afraid to do that before. And the first time I did that in front of you. So
it was really moving. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but it was.
Yeah, it was. It was. I've always been afraid to be myself, and I think it was. I think it was like October 2019 when I got married to my partner, who's a woman, and we had a lot of stuff with our families around that. So it was super difficult to deal with. And so I was always hiding that part of myself. But then it wasn't really, I felt like I wasn't being genuine and authentic when I was coaching people. And I thought I could never be a true authentic leader or coach until I was honest with myself. And so I decided to out myself in front of like 100 people that day, which was a quick crazy. And I didn't know how it'd go down. But when I got off stage and I saw people having tears in their eyes and stuff, and I was like, okay, this is probably something which I should have talked about before. So that was like the starting point for me to become more authentic myself. And then I think it was probably, again, maybe a couple of days later, was I went to the Women of the World Festival at South Bank, because things were still open then, and that was in March. So it's International Women's Day next week. So my friend and I went for that, and it was amazing. It was really inspirational. I heard all these people speak, and I basically then got so much inspiration. I knew that we're going into lockdown. I knew it. I just like, okay, this is going to happen. I'm not going to be able to go anywhere. So then that's when on my phone, I created a program. Basically, I thought that people might need, and that first part of the module was based on what I did at Courageous Leaders. So I kind of knocked it all up. I just thought, I'm going to create these modules. I think it's really important. I think people will benefit from it. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to go nuts and create it within a month, basically, and then roll it out, which is what I did. And it was like, it's just gone, like, it's kind of like exploded since then, which has been amazing.
And what's it called? Program.
That's a good label. So it's called The Power Within You. And although I've been like leadership coaching, I really wanted to create something which was a bit more around emotional well-being. And basically, the power within you, the premise is that we prevent ourselves from obtaining the life and work we desire because of the way we kind of view ourselves. So it could be our low self-image, not feeling good enough, our habits, our thought patterns that we can't seem to break. And all of this seems to prevent us moving forwards in our life. So in the program, I just took people through how to reach their full potential and make the steps to kind of, start creating a happy and hopefully joyous life with meaning and value.
Yeah, and it was amazing, really. I think it was 8 weeks.
It was only 7 now because you're my guest star and I haven't
I was
so.
I was the guest star at the end, which I felt a bit strange about, but it was lovely to do that, and it gave me a chance to really reflect. And I think what I learned from that, and what I'm still not very good at, is actually you have to make time to develop yourself and reflect. In fact, I'm getting better. Next week, I said to myself, I'm taking some time off to reflect on everything that's happened for me this year.
Yeah.
But what I learned is very much about, we hear about imposter syndrome all the time, but what is it and how do we tackle it? And I don't know, some of the modules in there, the task that you set us, to incrementally build up on. Again, I wasn't very often,
You're very good at that.
I found it difficult. I found
Really?
it's quite it wasn't difficult in terms of time and doing it. It was difficult in terms of I don't know if what I'm writing down is correct. I come from a science background, which might surprise some people now that I'm making films, but
Yeah.
I studied biochemistry at Union and I did science. I was a science teacher, and so I'm quite, I like facts and I like things and I like answers to things. And I think often when you're writing down stuff about yourself, it's often more questions than answers, I found. And so I found that quite a difficult process. How have you, the course is obviously it's doing great. It's on Skillshare as well. If you can get a free trial, I believe.
Yeah, I think
if
it's
you
like
haven't,
14 days. You can definitely cover it in that time and cancel the subscription, basically.
great. So get Mamta's course for free on Skillshare. But something else is really exciting has happened from that, which again, I think is just a real testament to, if there's an opportunity there, you have to go and take it and just put yourself out to the world. But what's happened with your course now?
Yeah, so I mean, so I ran the course live twice. That was including with you, Ed. And then I was like, oh, this is pretty tiring, I'm gonna have to record these sessions. But obviously I got advice from you to put it on Skillshare, which I think is a great platform. So I re-recorded all the sessions. And I made sure that, all the notes were there, gave all the module handouts to make sure that everyone knew their exercises, put it onto Skillshare, and then I just kind of left it. And I've got, I think, about 75 students now up there, which is great. So it's ticking along. But I then got scouted by a company in San Francisco called Script. Now, Script are a startup, we're going for about 10 years, and they provide ebooks, audiobooks. They partner up with all the big publishers. And this lady, the content manager, kind of like emailed me and said, I really like your stuff, watch the entire program. Can we please make it into an audio course? And I was like, what? This is like nuts. So basically what happened was I was like, yeah, cool. We had a meeting. And then they asked me to buy all this equipment for home so I could record it. So literally they took my videos, they wrote the script based on what I said. They sent it to me to sign off. I then recorded the 27 pages I had to record. And then they put it live within a couple of months. It went live on February, I think the 9th, I think, on Script, to over 1 million subscribers, which was amazing. And I think that I was just really wanting to impact a few hundred people. And I never thought in my wildest dreams within under a year that something like this could reach that many people, because I was like, that's not possible ever. But because I felt so authentic about it, because I put my heart and soul into it, there was no resistance. I wasn't doubting myself. I knew that this was a good thing. And amazing things happen when you're able to like just go, this is what I am, this is what I'm going to do. And it was just beautiful. It's been really lovely. And I've been delivering it to all sorts of companies, McKinsey, PricewaterhouseCoopers, you know, like M&C Saatchi. So I've been doing companies as well, which has been incredible.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. And all power to you with taking, you know, that opportunity and like you say, putting yourself out there, and then
Thank you.
good stuff happens. And you know, you've mentioned being authentic again. How can someone who watches this or listens to this and they see you and there's an element of jealousy in them, in the fact that you have now managed to step out and be your authentic self, but they're stuck, and for whatever reason it is, they feel they can't be their authentic self. How can they go about doing that? How can they get to that point? And it might be tricky because you might be to do with your parents, you might be living with your parents, or it might be to do with your race or religion or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about, you know, what sexuality you are. It could be anything, but you're not being yourself because of that. How can you go? What's your advice? How can people take that process of being their authentic self?
Do you know what? I don't. It was so hard, like teens and 20s, like that probably was the hardest time to kind of figure out what you want to do, because you are being pushed and pulled in different directions. School saying one thing, college is saying something, university, people do degrees and then they do something completely different afterwards, as well. So it's really hard to find that. But I think it's about, and what I rate about young people nowadays is that they do a plethora of things. For me, I was taught, you go to school, university, you do that job for 50 years, you then retire, but you should have kids in a house by then too, right? And then your kids, they should look after you. And that was the cycle of life, basically, and how I got taught. But nowadays, you know, young people have dreams and they have goals. And I know that social media doesn't particularly help, but one thing is to stay true to yourself, is really think about your dreams, right? Think about what those dreams are. And thinking that, you know, visualize what those dreams are. Think about what it feel like to be in those dreams, because I think we can prevent ourselves from moving forwards and thinking, can we do this? No, we're not good enough. Can we do that? No, it's not possible to do. But I want people to remember that whatever you put your mind to is possible to do, regardless of the circumstances you're in, because there's always a way. And you've seen it, so many inspirational stories from young people, like what they've done. So it could be, you know, helping out your community. It could be, you know, writing blogs. It could be, you know, just doing all sorts of stuff that makes you feel good about yourself. So the first thing to do is do things that make you feel good and joyful, right? That's number one. If you're not doing that, then you're on the wrong track. So it's about thinking about what makes me happy as a human being, what makes me happy, and then push those things forward. And then everything else will fall into place. And really don't ever stop thinking about what you can reach, what you can do in your life, because it's always possible to do.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. Start with things that make you
That's it. That's really
joyful
right?
and happy.
Yeah.
But, yeah, because life is hard and whatever you do is hard, but you're not going to achieve things if you're not passionate or purpose led, because you'll just drop them as soon as it becomes hard. I think
Absolutely. It's really hard to manage expectations, because your parents will want one thing for you. They'll want you to be a doctor or a dentist. Like my parents, they're like,
do your parents still get on to you?
They were just really happy that I passed my GCSEs and A-levels, because my brother failed twice. He's a really, really like successful man now. Can I just say, my brother, he failed his O-levels then. He failed his GCSEs, he failed his A-levels, he had to retake them, and now he's director of Bank of America, basically. So it shows that regardless of what grades you get as well, you can push forwards. Like we come from, you know, that kind of background. So my mum, he set an example. So mum's like, thank God you passed your exams. And that was it. And they're like, do what you want. But she has no idea what I do still. She thinks I'm a teacher. I could be a teacher.
You're an educator. let's say
Honestly,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's so interesting, isn't it? And I think parents just want the best, of course, want the best for their children. But it's interesting, the shift that we're seeing in the world of, you know, like you said, get a job, have a career, climb the ladder, do that for 50 years, retire, enjoy the money that you've saved up, hopefully have kids, they can then look after you when you're old and wrinkly, and then you die.
If they
And
don't
like
hate
that,
you.
if they don't hate you, that is such a you know, it's just a mythical way of living now, I think. But yet I see people that are still stuck in this, and I think you're right. Actually, young people are now, they're doing this and that and side hustles here and left, right, and center. And
It's amazing.
what you can learn is untapped. There's infinite amounts of knowledge and opportunities out there.
There is. There is.
But the imposter syndrome, and I
Mhm.
want to bring us back to this to get your insights into this, will keep coming back to a lot of people and will stop them in their tracks. Can you talk a bit more about imposter syndrome, and also like how do people get over this? Because you can have your self-awareness and you've done that and you've got your self-leadership, and but yet you're still struck down by this, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough to be. Yeah, and even if you are good enough, people then don't, well, I'm not worthy to be here, or I'm this or that. How does imposter syndrome work, and how can we get over that?
So when I talked about the inner critic earlier, which was the negative thoughts in your head about them criticizing you about things that you're doing, the imposter syndrome takes it further. So it's like even worse than the inner critic, because what happens is it stops you from moving forwards in your life. So you know, you could be a perfectionist. That's one type of imposter syndrome. You could be a superhero, so you want to do everything yourself. You know, not let anyone in and help you. You know, you could be someone who is the expert, so you're a natural genius. Like you think you have all the answers and you know things really well, but when something new comes along, then you get like totally put off and you don't know how to do it. So imposter syndrome, like, and we don't speak about it enough for both men and women, is that it is quite destructive in our lives, basically. So, and like you said, Ed, like the self-awareness definitely helps. You know, being aware of it definitely helps. But what I would say was, and this is something I did to get over my imposter syndrome, was to do it anyway. So feel the fear, but do it anyway. And so that's what I did. So I might have been fearful of it, but I did it. And when I did it, I was like, boy, that was really scary, but I did it. So I'm like, well done, well done. And then I put myself again into a situation like that, and then I feel better about it. I won't feel so, you know, nervous by it or so bad about it. So because I put myself in that situation. So it's having that resilience to push yourself. There's a fear, keep pushing your boundaries and keep going, you know what, I'm still going to do it, still going to do it. And then if you are doubting yourself each day, I ask my coaching clients to write down their daily reflections. And daily reflections is giving yourself a pat on the back. So it's one thing that's made you smile, one thing that you've accomplished, and one thing you're grateful for. And when you do these things every day, it changes your brain to know that you're actually progressing, you're doing good things are all good, you're grateful for what you have. And that will make you feel better as a person to move forwards with your desires and dreams. But imposter syndrome never really goes. It does sometimes, you know, still, you know, get you in the head, and it does make you feel bad, but you can manage it when it comes up. So for me, my goal is, if someone suffers from imposter syndrome, then I want them to have the tools and techniques to actually manage it, but move forwards anyway, because it's all in your head, basically.
Yeah, just do it. Great.
Just do it, like Nike said. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's great advice. And I was listening to a Will Smith, I think it was like a video that he did after his 50th birthday, and it was something about jumping out of a plane or a helicopter or whatever he did. And he was saying, you know, the fear of that experience is all beforehand.
Yeah.
And actually, at the most dangerous point of it, which is when you're falling out of a plane or whatever and your parachute, is actually the point where the fear goes, because you've already started. There's no turning back. You
Absolutely.
know, you just enjoy the ride. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we always do, is we think ahead and we catastrophize. And I know that was definitely a part of the course that you were talking about, like these elements of our brain, like, are you a catastrophizer or are you a worrier, and all these different elements. And I think a lot of us catastrophize and go, well, what if this happens, or what if that happens? And the reality is that, I know public speaking is a perfect example, but the only way to get better at public speaking is to public speak. There is,
Absolutely.
you can read all the books you want, but until you stand up and talk. So I love that. Just do it. We've got a few minutes left. It's absolutely flying by, but obviously this is around empathy as well.
100%.
How important has empathy been? Well, firstly, what is your definition of empathy? And then how important has it been in your life?
I didn't even know what empathy was, I didn't know what it meant, and actually I wasn't really taught about empathy until, maybe 5-10 years ago, if that actually. I think I'm naturally an empathic person. So for me, it means holding, and Alfred Adler said this real, just holding their heart in your hands and really caring for another person. So I think it was that RSA video that I saw. So sympathy is like, well, at least, you got a family, well, at least you got that. Whereas empathy is understanding. It's holding someone, it's understanding their vulnerability, being sensitive, listening. So for me, all those things are empathy. And I only realized probably that I am naturally empathic through my coaching, because I'm really good with people. So that's a natural career choice for me. But I didn't realize why. I don't think I was ever taught it. So I don't know where it comes from. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Like, how does it develop? I'm still not sure. But what I do know, that it changes the world. It completely changes relationships. It changes everything. And when you're empathic with someone, they change as well, because they are finally understood by you. They are finally understanding that there are people there for them that understand, and they can move forwards. So I think it's encompassing that love. And I've had feedback from clients to say that it's just your nature. It's like just being empathic is make it feel better, and I can do more. I feel stronger. So I think using empathy in my life is everything. It's everything at work, at home, with my family, with my friends. Being empathic makes me feel good, and it makes me feel happy, and it's just a wonderful, beautiful thing. And it's a wonderful, beautiful thing what you're doing as well with this.
Yeah, amazing. It's being seen and heard, isn't it? And I think what you describing earlier in the show, you were saying about the first time you were kind of fully open or authentic and outed yourself in front of 100 people when you were talking. But actually that was a pure moment of what I would call empathy. Everyone there had listened to you talk and beautifully talk about all the things that in the power within you and what that stands for and what you mean by that. And at the end, you demonstrated it both physically and mentally and verbally across. And then all of a sudden, there was just like everything you had said, which was great, but it had so much more meaning because everyone then understood who you are. And I think it was a perfect moment of leadership, really, because there was a huge amount of vulnerability there. And I think empathy is about whether you're being empathic towards someone else or they're being empathic towards you. It's about holding that space for vulnerability and true understanding, rather than walking past someone saying, "Oh, how are you?" and "Yeah, okay," and blah blah blah. You actually really want to get to the bottom of
Absolutely
of who someone is and what they stand for, and but also the fact that it's okay that you disagree with someone as well. It is about that understanding.
You can disagree but also understand at the same time, right? And that's the beauty. And I think that we're getting better at it, but it's through things like Empathy Week, that we're learning more about empathy, and actually bringing that into the young as well, like having the young empathize with each other. And can you imagine like the generation that you'll be creating going forwards? I'm so excited about like what this change will bring. Like, it's incredible. It really is.
By the way, I'm not paying.
Here's a fiver, mate.
To plug Empathy Week. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. I think a lot of people assume that Empathy Week, we're trying to change the world and we're trying to get everyone to do something kind to other people, but actually it's far simpler than that. It's before that action, which is great and we want to encourage to do. It's just step back and understand someone first.
Yeah.
And to change the world, you need to understand the people within it. And that's why I love what you're doing. I love the power within. It's one of those things where I think everyone can relate to it. There's so many different elements, and I really urge you to, if you have a Skillshare membership, great, go and do it, and search for the power within you by Mamta. But if you don't, sign up for free. Like you said, give yourself a few hours to go through the course, and you'll learn so much and take on those tips. Mamta, thank you so much for coming on. One last thing, what is next for you now that you're on this journey? What are you planning ahead, and what can people look out for from you?
Well, actually, I've been approached to write a book, so around leadership. So it's taking my experiences, my case studies, and also thinking about how I've influenced power within you. So that's been really exciting. So that will happen over the next year. Although it's quite difficult to write a book, I believe, and patience. I'm also starting next week an MSc at King's College on the psychology and neuroscience of mental health as well, which I've decided to go for, which is distance learning.
I did not know that.
I must be nuts to do that, but I can't. I need to get deeper. So for me, deepening the power within you needs to be more. I need to research it more, basically. Because now my own fear, my imposter syndrome, can I do better than this? So, that's what I need to do. So my next step is that, and taking the power within you forwards.
Amazing. And how can people find you? Because they're going to people are going to want to follow your journey and maybe reach out to you.
On my website. So it's www.theleaderinyou.co.uk, and you can find me there. My contact details are there as well.
Amazing. Mamta, thank you so much. A pleasure. It's always just great to chat. I forget that people are watching this or listening to this. It's just been like a great little catch up. Amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And yeah, everyone, please do check out what Mamta's been doing, because I think it's incredible. I think it's really, really useful for your own development and for your team's development, or for your development if you're at school or university. So go and check it out. And once again, thanks, Mamta.
No worries. Take care. Bye.
Bye.